Part 1. If they can move your emotions, they can move your mind. You think feeling everything makes you real. You think showing everything makes you authentic. You think wearing your heart on your sleeve makes you brave. Cold mind sees deeper. If they can move your emotions, they can move your mind. And if they can move your mind, they can move your reactions, your choices, your future. Every trigger they pull, every button they press, every subtle doubt they plant. They move you, not because they're stronger, but because you left the door open. The world doesn't need to overpower you. It only needs to provoke you. Anger, fear, shame, panic. Once you're emotional, you're predictable. You're programmable. You don't lead yourself anymore. You chase emotional fires. You surrender frame. Blind, automatic, reactive. But here's the truth. True power isn't about feeling less. It's about leaking nothing. You still feel. You still register. But you don't broadcast it. You don't hand over your steering wheel. You move from structure, from deliberate design, not from emotional surges. Because the second you move on feeling, the second you let emotion dictate your next step, you've already lost control. Part 2. You were trained to react, not to command. You weren't taught to command your emotions. You were trained to obey them. Fast, unfiltered, automatic. From the beginning, when you laughed at the right time, you were rewarded. When you cried too long, you were corrected. When you showed fear, you were protected. Every emotion became a managed event. Your emotions weren't treated as your own. They were treated as signals. Ways for others to shape you, control you, mold you. And you adapted fast, because approval felt safe and resistance felt dangerous. Cold mind exposes the deeper layer. You didn't learn emotional mastery. You learned emotional outsourcing. You handed over the keys. Without ever realizing it, every platform you touch, every system you navigate, every culture you breathe, they all run on this dependency. Schools punish emotional rebellion. Media monetizes emotional addiction. Society rewards emotional conformity. They don't need to control you directly. They only need to control your reactions. Because once your reactions are predictable, your choices follow. You think you're engaged because you react instantly, because you feel everything loudly. But cold mind sees the trap. You're not engaging, you're leaking. You're handing away frame, one emotional spike at a time. Every ad you scroll past, every headline you click, every opinion you absorb, they're all designed as weapons, built to move your emotions first, and your decisions second. The more emotional you become, the less structural you remain. And the less structural you are, the faster you're steered into chaos. They don't need stronger arguments. They don't need better facts. They don't even need to convince you. They only need to tilt your emotional weather. And you tilt your entire life. Trigger fear. You freeze. Trigger anger. You react recklessly. Trigger shame. You self-censor, shrink, and fall silent. Once your frame moves, your sovereignty bleeds out. Cold mind knows the goal isn't to kill feeling. The goal is to kill reflex. Feel it. Register it. But never move from it until you separate emotional signal from strategic action. You will keep mistaking instinct for intelligence, and you will keep leaking power. One triggered reaction at a time. Emotional reactivity isn't authenticity. It's programmable weakness. And cold mind refuses to be programmable. Part 3. Why emotional exposure becomes strategic weakness. You think showing your emotions makes you relatable. You think expressing everything makes you honest. You believe vulnerability equals strength, that transparency earns trust, that openness proves authenticity. Cold mind knows better. What you show becomes what they exploit. Emotion by itself isn't weakness, but emotion exposed, unfiltered, uncontrolled, becomes weakness leveraged. Every visible spike, every surge of anger, every flicker of fear, every tremor of insecurity is a map, a detailed map revealing your pressure points, your buttons, your vulnerabilities. When you show your emotions openly, without discipline, you hand over the playbook. You show what offends you, what frightens you, what distracts you, what pulls you off center. And once someone holds your emotional map, they don't need to out-argue you. They don't need to overpower you. They only need to press the right points and watch you move yourself. This is how emotional exposure destroys structure. You don't need to be physically dominated. You don't need to be logically dismantled. You just need to be moved emotionally, and you will sabotage yourself. You'll defend things that don't need defending. You'll respond to bait that didn't even have a hook. You'll collapse your own frame long before they even touch it. Cold mind sees deeper. The strongest systems don't react first. They observe. They calculate. They absorb the signal without rushing to respond, and they reveal nothing. Until every movement is deliberate, emotional exposure isn't authenticity. It's premature surrender. You think you're being real, but what you're really doing is leaking strategic position. True mastery isn't numbness. It's sealed fuel. You still feel, you still sense, but you don't broadcast. You don't signal. You don't advertise your weather. To a world trained to manipulate storms, the less you leak, the less they can predict. The less they predict, the less they control. The less they control, the more you hold command. Until you stop broadcasting every internal ripple, until you stop giving away your inner forecast, you will keep surrendering sovereignty, one unguarded emotion at a time. You're not just leaking feelings, you're leaking strategy. Cold mind knows. You're not here to suppress your humanity. You're here to harness it, to seal it, to channel it. Only when it serves your command. They don't need to break you if you volunteer your position first. Silence isn't hiding. It's holding. It's precision. And it's the first law of untouchable minds. Part 4. Cold emotional discipline. 3 phases to seal the frame. You don't control emotions by pretending they're not there. You don't control them by pushing them down, locking them away, or pretending you're above feeling. Cold mind knows. You control emotion by sealing the leak between feeling and action. It's not about killing the emotion. It's about commanding it. Here's the structure. 3 phases, executed without drama, without apology. 1. Feel it, but don't feed it. The moment a strong emotion hits. You don't flinch. You don't panic. You don't resist. You register it coldly, mechanically, like logging data. Anger detected. Fear signal active. Shame trigger online. You let the feeling exist, but you don't feed it. You don't build a story. You don't add mental fuel. You don't spiral or amplify. You just let it burn, right where it stands, without letting it spill outward. Most people fail here because they confuse feeling with movement. They think, if I feel it, I must express it. Cold mind cuts this illusion at the root. 2. Separate signal from action. Most people react to emotion as if it's a command, Anger rises, they lash out. Fear rises, they retreat. Shame rises, they self-censor. Cold mind separates. Signal equals internal alert. Action equals external choice. The signal can be loud, but it doesn't get to dictate movement. You create a gap, a conscious space, where you can ask one question: what movement serves my architecture? Not what feels good, not what feels urgent, not what will make this tension stop. Only what stabilizes my frame. In that gap, you reclaim your authority. You reclaim your right to decide what deserves energy and what deserves to die, unfed, inside you. 3. Move from structure, not emotion. Once you've separated the signal, you move. But you move from architecture, not impulse. You respond according to objective, frame, command hierarchy. Emotion is registered, but structure decides execution. No flinching, no chasing, no broadcasting, no announcing your internal weather to the world. Just cold, deliberate, calculated movement, based only on what serves your larger architecture. Cold emotional discipline isn't numbness. It's not indifference. It's not pretending you don't care. It's about becoming untouchable. You can feel rage without leaking anger. You can feel fear without leaking retreat. You can feel insult without leaking defense. Because emotion, when sealed, becomes fuel, not weakness. Cold mind doesn't move because it feels something. It moves because it chooses something. Freedom isn't the absence of feeling. It's the absence of emotional slavery. You still burn. You still register. But you move only from command, never from chaos. Let's see what cold emotional discipline looks like when it's alive, in action. Part 5. The one who stood still while everyone else drowned. The room was chaos. Arguments flying, voices rising, faces flushing. Everyone reacting faster than they could think, faster than they could even track. Every word sharper, every glance heavier, every movement a leak of emotional frame. But not him. He didn't shut down. He didn't pretend to be cold or blank or numb. He registered everything: the tension, the accusations, the fear running under the surface, the anger crashing like waves across the room. He felt the heat, but he moved like it didn't exist. When someone pointed a finger at him, he didn't snap back. He didn't defend. He didn't rush to prove himself. He paused, breathed once, slowly, spoke precisely, without rush, without sharpness, without rising to match their volume. When the room's energy escalated, he didn't chase it. He let the noise crash around him, let it bounce and shatter without absorbing it. When people leaned in, demanding a reaction, he didn't flinch. He recalibrated silently. He moved only when the architecture of the moment required a move. Cold mind sees what most miss. He wasn't suppressing himself. He wasn't bottling up his emotions or pretending he didn't care. He was sealing. He wasn't fighting the emotional storm. He was refusing to sail on it. Because leaking emotion isn't about the feeling itself. It's about moving impulsively. Instead of architecturally, it's about letting the environment write your next move, instead of making that decision yourself. He refused. He didn't collapse into the room's panic. He didn't join the emotional feedback loop. He stood like a fixed point, in a space spinning off its axis. And slowly, the chaos weakened. The noise lost energy. The raised voices deflated. The heat in the air cooled. The scattered attention pulled back toward him. Not because he overpowered anyone, Not because he argued harder or shouted louder, but because he outstabilized the room. You don't control environments by pushing harder than they push you. You control them by bleeding less than they bleed. Noise burns itself out. You just have to stand longer. Then the noise. You don't win by overpowering storms. You win by becoming the gravity. The storm can't move. Cold emotional discipline isn't passivity. It's not hiding. It's not freezing up out of fear. It's the architecture of silent command. It's the presence that holds. When everything else unravels, when everyone else leaks, you hold. When everyone else drowns, you breathe. When everyone else reacts, you select. You're not the loudest voice. You're not the sharpest reaction. You're the point of stillness. That makes the storm collapse into itself. Cold. Mind knows. You don't control space by noise. You control space by commanding your own. And when you command your own, the room commands itself around you. Part 6. Final message. Feel everything. Move from nothing. You don't need to kill your emotions, to command your mind. You only need to break the reflex that leaks them. The world will keep pushing your buttons. It will keep throwing noise at you, triggering old storms, testing your reactions. Because it doesn't need your permission to provoke you. It only needs your cooperation to control you. Cold mind doesn't resist storms. It doesn't get caught in noise. It doesn't dance for emotional bait. It registers. It structures. It selects. You don't win by feeling less. You win by sealing everything. You don't have to harden your heart. You have to cold forge your frame. Feel everything. Move from nothing. That's not numbness. That's cold command. CTA, transition to next video. In the next video, we'll build cold emotional structures. The internal architecture. That lets you walk through chaos. Untouched, unmoved, undefeated. Subscribe now. Seal the leak. Command the storm.